I am in absolute disbelief. So, as someone who has enjoyed Failure Frame from first episode all the way to this one, the only criticism I had was the jarring as hell cutaways that they would do. And it wasn't, when 3D pops up in anime, sometimes it blends in great, sometimes not so much. But we know why it happens, it's sometimes easier to do, it makes it so a scene can be finished. But Failure Frame always was doing it in a way through pretty much 2 through 5, in a way that was so freaking weird. Where it would be this close-up shot, looking at characters talking, then they would cut to the next shot and they were 3D models walking. Literally any anime fan in existence would prefer like a static shot that barely moved than whatever is. And it's no exaggeration that every other scene, not when like there's these intense moments, the intense moments have always looked good, but for some uncanny reason, dialogue scenes would flip-flop between 2D and 3D. To the point that it's like, oh, this has one of the best art directions of the season, and oh, I'm looking at PS2 graphics. It was wild. We didn't have an episode last week. We had the break. And we come back with episode 7, and there's not a single trace of 3D to be found. I didn't realize it at first. It took me to like half the episode inwards, and it was when Sierra and Toka were talking in the room, I thought to myself, wait a second, something's missing. And the thing that was missing was the awkward as hell direction when I'm like, that scene would have been 3D in any other episode. Why is it hand-drawn? Was the break just that good enough that we got on track? And honestly, the conspiracy part of me wants to believe that a single week break doesn't really change that much. It can help a bit, but at the end of the day, they're working on all these episodes, right? Like, it is what it is. But I've always thought to myself, it feels like the way Failure Frame works is that when it gets close to having like, okay, we're close to broadcast, and this scene we don't have the time, so let's just plop their generic ass 3D character model and move them in the most basic way. And maybe because they didn't have to do it because of that week, they just had the ability, because it's not even like the scene was crazy. Like, there's this one particular shot I'm going to show right now that would have been 3D in any other episode, and it's not like it's the craziest best looking scene, but it was a freaking 2D mouth drawn. It almost feels too good to be true, man. The whole episode, I'm waiting for the moment to drop where it's just going to be an abomination. We are going into a Coliseum fight, so maybe that's where it's going to look real nasty, but, hey, for right now, I'm going to take the W. It seems like they fixed Failure Frame's biggest issue. I'm still waiting for the 3D to pop back in like Truck-kun trying to isekai his next victim. But it seems like we're on track visually. Now, I do have full live reactions over on Patreon. If you want to see my full and thought to any of these Failure Frame episodes, it's going to be over there exclusively. So, definitely one of the more enjoyable episodes for sure. We get some interesting little world development in terms of who's taking up the claim that they were the ones who killed the Dragoons, which obviously we know our boy did. We get, a little meeting with the goddess and, her lackeys and everything going on there. But the biggest thing for me was actually just seeing how human Toko is able to feel this episode, given, Sierras wants to be his sword, right? Like, really wants to protect and, be the offensive for him. And she's going above and beyond. The sexual chemistry between these two is off the charts, and it's not one-sided either. If our boy wasn't so bound and determined by revenge right now, I'm pretty sure he would have hopped into bed. Let's just put it blunt. I don't know exactly what was put into his stuff, but that aphrodisiac was working on overdrive. And pretty much, it kind of felt like a confession where he's like, I just can't focus on anything other than revenge right now. But it kind of came across as if I didn't have to focus on revenge, yeah, there's something you could do for me. And from her point of view, she is very clearly hot and flustered by our boy. So, the chemistry be off the charts. And, it's just kind of a refreshing turn of events because up to this point, he's been kind of like, for obvious reasons, his whole life was shit. And then he gets thrown into this world, gets treated even worse. It's understandable why, he kind of been pulling the trigger on all these scumbags in the world, but even if they're scumbags, it's going to take a toll on your mental state when you go from literally normal life to now we're casually killing people who are bad in a world. But it's just kind of refreshing because it just allowed for them to come across as human. Like that scene, because we haven't seen it really since he left the labyrinth, I'm pretty sure, but we know he has that magical bag that can just like randomly spawn in things from his world. And the idea of her just like being super like just enthralled by that. And the idea of like, oh my god, that's so good, and then feeding Piggy Mar, it's just very, very cute. It's kind of like, it acts as a slice of lifestyle episode, but I think between the mixture of it being arguably the best produced episode since the first episode. The first episode's still better because the first episode had damn style, like it looked real good. Yeah, there was some 3D monsters and stuff, but in general, like it still was a very well put together episode. I think this is probably the second best put together episode. The action has always been very good in the show, even when 3D's been around, in my humble opinion. It's just when it's random ass dialogue scenes talking and they just randomly turn them into 3D blobs, it's like, what in the actual hell are you doing, boss? But the idea of like seeing where they're at, seeing the chemistry bond, and then learning about the Coliseum, and the Coliseum, I mean, for any, I don't know what it is, like something in the water this season, there's a lot of Coliseum tournament arcs going on, and I'm all for it. But we know our boy's going to kick some ass and take some names, and it will be interesting because it seems like he's going to be wearing that mask. To me, looks pretty cool, but I could see how it could be a little too overpowering for a lot of people, because I've had that issue with video games where I'm like, it seems like a little too overboard, and it kind of does give me that feeling, but there's something kind of cool. Maybe it's the art direction of the show that just makes it pop out, but that Lord of the Flies mask is pretty awesome in my opinion. But in general, though, I mean, on surface level, it doesn't seem like this episode was anything too crazy, but I didn't have an issue with it. It was just, it kind of flew by. The first 10-12 minutes of this episode just blink and I missed it. I'm like, Jesus, like everything just really felt well paced. The chemistry of the characters is good. And then we start learning a bit more. I'm like, I really like how the idea that clearly we're not taking credit for killing humanity's strongest warrior and his lackeys, but the idea of like these creepy bastards coming in, like it makes sense someone would take the claim of all that, especially if you didn't want it to seem like, you know, one, our boy did it, but also because there's clearly people with power who would be like, yeah, I absolutely did that, not caring about the repercussions because it just further progresses you and stuff like that. Definitely cultist follower vibes for sure, but, you know, very good stuff nonetheless. But yeah, I do think it's too good to be true. I totally expect next episode will be a 3D mess, because there's no way, unless we got a situation similar to Slime, the latest reincarnated as a slime season, the first like 12 episodes of season 3 of that, like it's fine, but it wasn't as polished as previous seasons. And then literally 13 onwards has been just popping off visually. Maybe the first half of this season crawled so the second half could run. Maybe we got lucky. I don't know. But freaking fantastic episode. Let me know your thoughts and feelings though down below. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new around here. Of course, ring that bell. And like I mentioned, we got those full live reactions over on Patreon. And hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shout out. Alright, so today we got Oris Lopez, Project 7, Emma K-Pop, Sandra Nuns, 0451 Jim, Justin Bernard, Clay Samuel, Hayden, Cody Namir, and we also have Thomas Smith. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care, and you all have a good one.